Hopkins and Gene Clark. Good afternoon and welcome to the studio, gentlemen.
Hey,
welcome,
Jim.
Thank you. Welcome back to Toronto. Wasn't too long ago that you were just back here. You were just here, put on an outstanding show at the Diamond, and you're going to do it again tonight.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Yeah, January, I believe we were here. I got to say, we're looking at this great view of Toronto right now in the cities. It's really cool. We always like it when we're here.
Fantastic.
I have to say that the Diamond is probably one of the most fun places that we've ever played. I mean, we play a lot of, we play all kinds of venues, some, 10,000 seaters down to 500 and, 300 and things like that. And the Diamond's always been one of our favorite places. We always have a ball there, So it's good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, Toronto always looks better in the sunshine anyway. And I was just wondering, before you came here, I thought, my God, what am I going to talk to these guys about? We could sit here probably for at least a couple of weeks and talk about Byrds' history, but...
well, even not just Byrds, but all the people related to it and all the different progressions of the groups. Yeah, history, basically, but also just on Nicky's side here, going through the immense amount of track record he's got, you go on too, But, well, let's have John talk for a while.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, over to you.
John, you were in and out of the Byrds a couple of times, as was Gene, and you first showed up on the Dr. Byrds, Mr. Hyde record. You were formerly with Sir Douglas Quintet for a while down in Texas. Where are you based out of now?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, as the rest of the band is.
Yeah.
And what were some of the highlights for you, looking back over the years?
Well, I guess for me, playing with Clarence was a real highlight. Playing with Clarence White was a really big deal to me. Just a phenomenal musician, and even now, people are only now beginning to realize just how ahead of his time he was,
Excellent.
We had...
Go ahead.
We had some great times where we'd come home after a gig, and we'd be all wired, and there'd be nothing to do, so Clarence and Gene, they knew all these old gospel tunes and bluegrass tunes that I had not been exposed to really, and they would like teach me a verse and a chorus, and we'd go searching around looking for a good place, like maybe a hallway with a great echo, or a men's room with tile, and we'd sit and sing, and because they got off on singing all the bluegrass harmonies, that was a real thrill for me.
What just out of curiosity, when you left the Byrds, what did you do in between time before you decided to get back?
Well, I sort of dropped out for a long time. I got into playing classical music for a while. I studied classical piano and classical guitar for a while, and got into Middle Eastern music for a while.
Really? And what came about? What hit you that made you decide to get back with the Byrds? Did Gene have something to do with it?
Yeah.
I figured.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we met at a show at the Palomino in Los Angeles one night, and I was with Michael Clark then. And Michael and I came to see a show, and John happened to be... I hadn't seen John for, Lord, maybe 15 years anyway, something like that. I had no idea what had happened. I kept asking people through the years. I would go, what happened to John York? Where did he ever go? And there he appears up. And so John and I got together over at my house, sat down, and started picking a little bit, and it just went real smooth right from the get-go. And then that was about a year and a half ago, and we organized a tribute tour and put that together and went out on the road. And then the band has gone through different member changes. Now it's me, Nicky, and John, and of course Carlos Bernal, and Greg Thomas on drums, and Billy Darnell on guitar, and that's the band. Now it's a pretty solid, firm band at this point. We don't really see member changing going on anymore. You just sort of have to go through different people and stuff until it sits solid, and we're real comfortable with it right now. We've been in the studio recording.
Excellent.
We have quite a few things on tape, which, we're in the process. It takes quite a while, really. These days, when you sort out an album, you sit down and record it. And of course, we have to do it when we're in Los Angeles and we have the time to go in the studio. So it's kind of a stop-and-go project, but I think it'll be worth taking the time to do it. to do it right. You know, we may want to go back and recut some of the things that we've done already. So.
Excellent. Well, you've had some notables in your band. Well, Graham Parsons comes to mind, David Crosby, and of course, Roger McGuinn. Did you know it's Roger's birthday
Roger's
today?
birthday,
Yeah,
that's right.
Of course you would know.
Happy birthday, Roger.
Happy birthday, Roger.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good introduction to what you guys are up to right now. I thought for the next little while, when we just sit back and play some of your favorite tunes and what they mean to you.
Okay.
You want to start, Gene?
You want to start with Here Without You? Just because a lot of times, you know, some of the cuts on the records, on the albums, don't get played as often as a lot of the ones, so I'd like to play that one.
Okay, you got it.
Right.
Here Without You, the Byrds on Q107. Q107 and the Byrds in 8 Miles High. And, Gene, I have a question for you. Was there any legitimate reason for the banning of that song many years ago?
Well,
Did they have a case?
let's see, that was when, about late 1966 or early 67 when that was released. So, just the idea, I believe, what I recall from what happened then was the idea that the word high was in the song. And people, I think, would sing, well, you know, they're talking about getting high. So, you know, we can't play this. So a lot of stations at that time wouldn't. Of course, these days, man, the difference in what they'll put across the air compared to then is incredible, you know. I think, you know, as far as I can recall, the only real reason was because they thought it was a drug song, talking about LSD.
There was one guy, they gave this guy a job. There's one DJ who went on some kind of a campaign. He picked that song as an example.
Well, there were several
one
things
guy
that
really
pointed
started.
out. There were even a couple of instances where some government officials had pointed out that they didn't think that this kind of material was good for the public, you know, the younger generation at that time, you know. And so I think that there was the assumption that it was a drug song, which actually it really wasn't. It was the thing, we couldn't call the song 6 Miles High because it just didn't sound right. It was about the altitude that a jet plane flies at. And we went to England on the first tour, Rain Grey town, known for its sound, you know, that kind of a stuff thing. And signs in the streets that say where you're going or somewhere just being your own. We didn't have we ran into quite a reception from our fans in England, but quite a bit of hostility the first time over there from a lot of other people except for the other musicians. There seemed to be a hostility toward us being American, and at that time we had been #1, I think, for 6 weeks or something straight in England, and so it was really a song about, you know, really had very little to do with drugs. You know?
Amazing. Of course, at the time, Timothy Leary was advising everybody to
Oh, yes, that's true.
drop
He
out.
was.
And
Dropped
so
out.
I guess a lot of the wrong people were reading the wrong words in between the lines or something.
Well, it's,
Basically.
you know, poetry of that sort is left open to anyone's imagination to sort of do what they would like with it, you know, and I think that that's fine as far as I'm concerned, but then it is the fact that they do what they like with it. They can assume anything behind it, and you have somebody sitting there going, oh man, they said get high in this song, we're getting this out of here, you know.
Oh, wow. Well, that was one of your favorites, Gene, and I suppose it's still one of the main songs that you're still performing in concert?
Absolutely. We do, of course, all the classic things. If we were to do all the material that we had amongst us, we'd have to be on stage for 3 days. So it's, you know, it's that kind of a thing, or more even. I mean, for all the different things that we've all been involved in and done, even of notoriety. But we do as much of the classic, you know, we always do Turn Turn and 8 Miles High and Tambourine Man, things like that. And then we do some of the new songs, too. So we're going to throw a few of the new ones in tonight.
All right.
And now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Hopkins.
Thank you. And, Nicky, with your background, it's hard to pinpoint any one particular highlight because there's probably been so many of them.
Yeah.
And I know you've had a hard time trying to pick out a song that relates to what you've been through over the last little while. No doubt you've been with everybody Just about. Jeff
Well,
Beck, of course, comes to mind. Jefferson
yeah.
Airplane, early stuff, Starship, and countless others. But you did manage to grab a copy of The Who's Next, which you contributed to.
Right.
And the song you chose here was The Song Is Over.
That's right.
Any particular reason why that one stands out more than any others?
No, I think that particular record, Who's Next, is one of the all-time great rock and roll albums. Using the term rock and roll very loosely.
Losing my mind.
Losing my mind 30 floors up in Toronto. No, they were a great band. I've often been asked the question, who did you like recording with best over the years? And it's always come down to a choice between the Stones and the Who. And quite honestly, I'm just a little overrun on hearing the Stones records. I've heard them, I mean, they're great, but I've just heard them so many times. And the Who I hear rather less.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't even tell you which ones I preferred recording with, because they're both different, but both great bands. And the Who, unfortunately, are no longer together, but they did some incredible stuff over the years and contributed a hell of a lot to the progress of rock and roll, as did the Byrds and the Stones and the Beatles.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And a good choice.
Thank you.
Featuring Nicky on keyboards, The Who on
Yay.
Q107. Q107 Rock Radio on a psychedelic Sunday. Jim James in for Andy Frost, and we have some special guests this afternoon. Members of the Byrds, Nicky Hopkins, John York, and Gene Clark, who will be in town, or you already are in town. You're going to be on stage tonight.
We'll be in town.
We're over this.
That's nice to know. At the Diamond tonight
At the Diamond.
Q107 kicks off. Q107 week at the Diamond. We're going to be there all week. Gentlemen, great song there featuring Nicky Hopkins with The Who, one of many bands that he's played with, now with the Byrds, and it looks as though, Nicky, you found a home.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Feels like it, too.
It does?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's
Great.
really good. And things are starting to come together well for you. We were just talking about the fact that you're all based in Los Angeles now, and you didn't know that there was another earthquake there this morning.
No, not until
No.
about 10 seconds ago, and you
No,
just
we
told
didn't.
us.
Oh, boy.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it looks like the phones will be ringing, calling home.
Yeah,
to
one
find out
day.
if everything's intact.
Oh.
You kind of get used to living with them there, though. At least I have. I've been through several of them, and you get to a point where, well, oh, there's another one, you know. You just hope that you're not sitting here when
Yeah.
that happens.
30
you know,
floors up, right?
30 stories up, you know, something like that.
And everything starts to shake.
I
Really?
hate those things. I can't stand them. And they freak me out.
They would, me too, actually. We had a tremor here several months ago during the winter.
Really?
Yeah, it was around the time the Mexico
Cross this one off
earthquake.
the list of places to live there. Oh, God.
It was a mild one, though.
Good.
We were also talking about the fact that the general feeling, not only in the music circles, but in the world, generally speaking, on this side of the world, particularly North America, Canada, the U.S., that things are returning to that congenial feeling that was once prevalent in the 60s. And we were
Yeah.
talking that it seems like it has come full circle again.
It does feel like that. Well, what we were just saying is, you know, there was a period during the 70s and late 60s and through the mid 70s and early 80s, even up till like 79 and 80 actually, where it seemed like the music business or the music people all were so standoffish. And I remember in the old days how groups used to exchange good feeling and ideas amongst each other, you know. I mean, we were talking about highlights. I mean, meeting the Beatles in England, you know, in '65, and the Stones and the Moody Blues, and hanging out with all those guys and exchanging ideas and getting to really have a good a brotherhood with these people, you know, basically, and it became like you were really in a family, sort of. And then it sort of disappeared for a lot of years, and now I've noticed a lot of people doing that again, getting back together in different groupings, coming together to make music and work on things, and a good vibe. Plus, it seems that the audiences in a lot of places we've noticed are really into hearing good rock and roll again. You know, they're coming out to hear it again, and it's all ages. It isn't, just a certain age group that comes to see us. It spans an incredible, like 40 years or more, that people come out and hear. So it feels real good, and I've got to say that this version of the band that we have now is my all-time favorite version of the band. It's the most fun to play with. And I believe it's probably, in a lot of respects, the tightest that we've ever had, too. And that's not to discount anything that was, in the past or anything. It's just that this feels really good. And I think it's John's turn to talk. Potato goes in the right place.
That's right. Yeah.
Potato in the right place.
Yeah, the front, not the back, Carlos. Good morning, America. Yes.
Don't forget the salon.
This is your old Uncle Smiley talking to you from the 30th floor of the Toronto Express building. Or whatever it is.
You guys are crazy. I want to touch on the fact that in the early days, you took the folk genre, or the whole folk generation, out of the folk area and into rock, and I guess Bob Dylan had a lot to do with that. But you not only touched base in folk, rock, but as well country, which was a very prevalent aspect of the Byrds. And I guess that leads nicely into John. John, that is...
Yeah, a kid from New York.
But tell us a little bit about your country influences.
Well, I think it comes down to... One of the things that always struck me about the Byrds is there was a real, almost like a prospecting for what was real in music, as opposed to all this other kind of music that's designed by record company accountants or something. And when I encountered Roger and Clarence and Gene, they seemed to have already plugged into something that I had only minimally been exposed to coming from the New York area. Like I used to listen to WWVA, Wheeling, West Virginia, and listen to a lot of real authentic American music, but these guys knew a lot about it, and I was really open at the time. I was like 19 or something, and they had so much to share that we would just sit around for hours and just play all this stuff, and it really set a fire in me for that kind of music,
Mm-hmm.
And it really is authentic people's music. It's like if they passed a law tomorrow that said it's against the law to play music, and if we catch you, we're going to hang you, There's still people that in their living rooms or whatever, they'd still be doing it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's real important. And the Byrds, though, we're plugged into that.
Definitely. Covering a lot of covering a lot of ground, actually. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it all seems to fit so nicely together. John, you were first on the Dr. Byrds and Mr. Hyde record.
Yeah.
And that included a song, I guess, part of the early success of the Byrds would have to be the movie Easy Rider, if you don't mind me saying so.
Definitely.
Because one of my favorite Byrd tunes of all time has to be Wasn't Born to Follow.
Yeah.
And there was a few other songs that showed up on that soundtrack, particularly one of your favorites, and one that you appeared on was Drugstore Truck Driving Man. You want to give us a little background on that?
Oh, yeah, I don't think that was on the film score.
Not on the album, I don't think. But
oh, you mean on Dr. Byrds? Yeah, I think Graham and Roger wrote that tune. It's just, it's about a DJ that I won't mention any names, but a guy who had a certain public attitude, but his private attitude was pretty abrasive. He was very upset about these long hairs who thought they could play country music. He thought that we didn't belong there. And I remember we played the Grand Ole Opry, and with the exception of about 5 people sitting way in the back that were probably more cow than human, everybody in the place flipped out when we came out and played, what they all thought was their music. And that's really what the song is about. These close-minded people that kind of overflow on these big stools and sit around and talk like cowboys, but they're... You know what I'm saying.
Great picture.
All right, let's give it a listen. Drugstore, Truck Driving Man.
Overflowing O's.
The Byrds on
Potato
Q107. Q107, rock radio in Toronto on a psychedelic Sunday with the Byrds and Drugstore Truck Driving Man. In the studio this afternoon, John York, Nicky Hopkins, and Gene Clark. Well, gentlemen, in closing, let me ask you about your itinerary. We just touched on the surface there. You're in the midst of a big one right now.
Well,
big tour.
We're doing a 3-week tour right now, a little bit of Eastern Canada. We did the Statue of Liberty celebration on the 5th. We played for the Liberty Weekend in New York, which was really a kick. I mean, that was fabulous. You couldn't even get a cab in New York City. There were so many people there. Forget even
13 million.
Forget even getting a taxi, but it was quite a rush to be there. We're going to go, we end this tour around the 27th of this month. We're in Las Vegas for 2 weeks in August. And then we're off to Australia for 3 weeks, and then to Europe for 2.5 months.
Excellent.
So it's going to be quite a trip. You know, we're doing basically a world tour right now.
Really? Well, that's great to hear. And you're in town tonight at the Diamond. Showtime, Jim?
Oh, we'll put them on around 9:30, 10 o'clock.
9:30, 10 o'clock, and you're all invited to come down, a Q107 presentation. In fact, the first night of a whole week of activity for Q107. And we're looking forward to that. Good to have you guys back in town. Should be a rockin' time for a Sunday. Woo. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've played, this will be the 3rd time that we played at the Diamond, and every time it's just been
we love the
fabulous.
Diamond.
I mean,
Great.
it's been fabulous there, you know.
It is.
The audiences are great, the vibe is great there, and, you know, needless to say, everybody come down because it's going to be a great time.
Yeah.
You're going to like the band.
And if you don't, we'll set fire to you.
Okay.
So in closing, you have chosen one final song for your set, and you picked the Beatles. Now, I'm curious.
Well, I think out of respect, as much as they were just such an incredibly brilliant bunch of guys. I mean, the things they came up with and how they stuck it out the way they did for years and years of not making it and being on the road and not making no money, and then to become like the greatest rock and roll group ever. You know, this thumbs down to anything else. And having known them through the years and not being real close in recent years, but there was a while then where Nicky, I know, spent some time with John, and he was always my favorite Beatle. Just a heavy cat, you know, and so we'd like to kind of say, hey, John, wherever you are, and we're still hearing from you, you know, and it's nice to hear you still talking to us this way, you know.
Excellent.
Through your records.
Right.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming down, and we'll check you out tonight at the Diamond.
Thank you, Jim.
Gene,
Yeah, thanks,
Nicky,
man.
John, all the best. The Beatles on Q107.